Afzal al-Din Badil ibn Ali Khaghani Shirvani, known as Khaghani, was born in 520 AH in Shirvan and passed away in 595 AH in Tabriz. He is regarded as one of the most renowned Iranian poets and among the greatest qasida composers in the history of Persian poetry and literature. One of his most significant titles is Hassan al-Ajam, which means the Persian Hassan. His tomb is located in the city of Tabriz, Iran. Afzal al-Din Badil ibn Ali Khaghani Shirvani was born in Shirvan in 520 AH, according to the Islamic calendar. His birth date has been deduced from references in his divan, or collection of poems. His father, Najib al-Din Ali Marwazi, was a carpenter, and his mother was a Nestorian Christian who had converted to Islam. His uncle, Kafi al-Din Umar, was a physician and philosopher, and Khaghani was under his patronage until the age of 25. Under his uncle's guidance, he studied various literary and philosophical sciences. After Abu al-Ala introduced him to Khaghani Shirvanshah, he was given the title Khaghani. Before that, he used the pen name Haqa'iqi. After this introduction, he was closely associated with the Shirvanshah court for nearly 40 years, serving both Manucher Shirvanshah and his successor, Akstan Shirvanshah. Around the year 550 AH, Khaghani set out for Iraq, hoping to meet the scholars of Khorasan and the courts of the East. However, upon reaching the city of Ray, he fell ill. The governor of Ray prevented him from continuing his journey, forcing him to return to Shirvan, where he was imprisoned for a time. After some time, he obtained permission from the Shirvanshah to embark on a pilgrimage to Mecca. During his journey, he composed several qasidas while visiting the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Upon returning to Shirvan, he rejoined the royal court. However, tensions arose between him and the Shirvanshah for unknown reasons. As evidenced by his prison poems, which are preserved in his divan, he spent about 1 year in prison. In his later years, he settled in Tabriz, where he eventually passed away. His tomb is in the Maqbarat al-Shu'ara, the poet's mausoleum, in the Surkab district of Tabriz. The year of his death has been recorded as 595 AH, though some sources mention 582 AH. Khaghani is celebrated as one of Iran's greatest poets and the composer of the famous and magnificent Qasida, the Arch of Ctesiphon, Mada'in. He was a highly learned poet who introduced a new style into Persian poetry, characterized by his unique themes and exceptional poetic craftsmanship. As a poet of the 6th century AH, Khaghani is considered one of the greatest masters of Persian literature. However, he remains somewhat obscure to the general public due to the complexity of his themes, elevated diction, and unparalleled poetic craftsmanship. Because of this, he is often referred to as Dīr Āshenā, the poet who is difficult to get acquainted with. Many Persian literary scholars believe understanding and fully appreciating his poetry requires prior literary preparation. Khaghani's poetic skills were so remarkable that he influenced poets such as Nizami Ganjavi, Vashi Bafki, Rumi, Hafez, and Saadi. One of his most distinctive characteristics is his reverence for Christianity and Islam, a testament to his religious tolerance and the respect he held for both faiths. Khaghani is known as the poet of dawn because he frequently and beautifully depicts the morning and sunrise in his poetry. His works are characterized by intricate themes, unique poetic descriptions, spiritual and mystical reflections, exceptional imagination and imagery, innovative word combinations, the extensive use of literary devices, references to scientific fields such as mathematics, medicine, and astronomy, musical elements, and cultural traditions of his era. His poetic style greatly influenced later poets, including Attar of Nishapur, Rumi, Saadi, and Hafez. Among them, Hafez was particularly influenced by him, a testament to Khaghani's enduring influence and the appreciation of his legacy. However, Khaghani deeply admired the poet Sanai of Ghazni, a mystical poet of the 5th and 6th centuries AH, and followed his style in composing mystical qasidas. His respect for Sanai was so profound that he referred to himself as the second Sanai. I have come to this world as Sanai's successor. For this reason, my father named me Badil, substitute. Some literary scholars, such as Alfi in Lubab al-Albab, have stated that Khaghani's poetic style marked the pinnacle of classical Persian poetry. Many great scholars have praised his profound intellect, creativity, and poetic talent. Christian references frequently appear in Khaghani's poetry. His interest in Christianity is considered one of the defining characteristics of his poetry, to the extent that some scholars compare his references to Christ to the entire presence of Christ in Persian literature. In the 6th century AH, Khaghani pioneered a new and unique style in Persian poetry, distinct from the prevailing Khorasani style. He skillfully crafted a fresh poetic approach, as he proclaimed in a qasida, "I am the king of poetry and prose in Khorasan and Iraq. Impartial masters recognize me as one who tests scholars in every word. I have introduced a new style, not following ancient customs." Khaghani spent his final years in Tabriz, where he passed away. His tomb is in Maqbarat al-Shuara, a historic cemetery in Tabriz, which has been the resting place of more than 400 poets and mystics over the past 800 years. Since 1350 SH or 1971 AD, a memorial has been built at Maqbarat al-Shuara, making it one of Tabriz's key landmarks. In 1387 SH or 2008 AD, it was officially registered as a National Heritage Site of Iran. Afzal al-Din Badil ibn Ali Najjar, known as Khaghani, was born around 520 AH in Shirvan. His father, Ali, was a carpenter, and his mother was originally a Nestorian Christian who converted to Islam and worked as a cook. From childhood, he was raised by his uncle, Kafi al-Din Umar ibn Uthman, a philosopher and physician who educated and nurtured him in various sciences and virtues. Gradually, Khaghani became one of the prominent court poets for Shirvanshah Manucher, and later his successor, Aksatan ibn Manucher. He received generous rewards and gifts from them. He performed the Hajj pilgrimage twice, first in 551 AH and again in 567 AH. On his second return, he visited the ruins of Mada'in or Ctesiphon, where he mourned the lost grandeur of the Sasanian Empire and composed his famous Qasida, the Arch of Mada'in, Mada'in. In 570 AH, he was imprisoned by the order of Aksatan ibn Manucher and spent 8 months in jail. In 571 AH, his son Rashid al-Din passed away, leaving him heartbroken. Khaghani followed the Shafi'i school of Islamic jurisprudence and held strong religious sentiments. His divan, or collection of poetry, includes magnificent odes about Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad, piety, asceticism, and devotion to religion. His divan consists of approximately 17,000 verses, and during his pilgrimage he composed a 3,000-verse masnavi or narrative poem called Tuhfat al-Iraqain. He also left behind a collection of letters, known as Monshat, addressed to the notable figures of his time, showcasing his remarkable prose writing skills. Khaghani Shirvani was one of the greatest poets of the 6th century AH. He excelled in composing qasidas, while also writing ghazals, tariband, rubayat and qitas. A unique style and innovative approach mark his poetry. He used novel expressions and unprecedented imagery, often boasting about his originality in poetry. Khaghani was a contemporary of other great poets such as Nizami Watawat, Jamal al-Din Abd al-Razak, Anvari Zahir al-Din Faryabi, Athir al-Din Aksikati, and others. Many of these poets praised his talent and poetic prowess. Though he occasionally clashed with his contemporaries, composing satirical verses against them, his literary excellence remained undisputed. Several key features distinguish his qasidas: cohesion and unity, frequent use of verb-based rhymes, innovative themes and unique perspectives, original expressions, and exclusive stylistic choices. Khaghani's famous title, Hassan al-Ajam, the Persian Hassan, was given to him by his uncle Kafi al-Din, a reference to Hassan ibn Thabit, the famed poet of the Prophet Muhammad. He often referred to himself in poetry as the deputy of Hassan. Ctesiphon was the imperial capital of the Sasanian Empire and reached its greatest extent during the reign of Khosrow I, also known as Anushirvan. It was the largest city among several settlements collectively referred to as the cities, Sharha, in Persian or Mahose in Syriac. Sometimes it was also called Mahose Malka, the king cities, or Medina, the cities, which the Arabs later adopted as al-Mada'in. Khaghani's famous Mada'in, the Arch of Mada'in, is a poetic reflection on the ruins of Ctesiphon, expressing grief over the lost glory of the Persian Empire. Behold, the ruins of Mada'in stand in sorrow, a mirror reflecting the lessons of time. Tak Kasra, the regular residence of the Shirvanshahs, may have been a relatively simple building in terms of construction, but its grandeur, magnificence, and the thickness of its walls never failed to amaze and inspire spectators. The sheer scale of this structure, rather than the intricacies of its design, was what truly captivated the audience. Tak Kasra in Mada'in is the best and most beautiful of all buildings made of gypsum and brick. The reception hall of Tak Kasra was a place of majestic opulence. On the designated day, a large crowd would gather at the Apadana, filling the vast hall in a short time. The hall was adorned with luxurious carpets, and even the walls were covered with them. Wherever there was no carpet on the walls, mosaics adorned them, created by the command of Khosrow I. After the Battle of Qadisiyah, Saad ibn Abi Waqqas remained there for 2 months. Umar ordered that women, children, and a portion of the army remain in ATQ, while the rest marched towards Mada'in, also known as Ctesiphon. The Sasanian kings were the architects of a grand palace known as the White structure that stood as a testament to their power and influence. This magnificent edifice, built by Anushirvan, also known as Khosrow the Just, was one of the greatest and tallest structures of its time. Today, the remnants of this grandeur, including the Iwan arch, some wings, and a wall built with large and wide bricks, continue to evoke a sense of awe and fascination. It is told that when Anushirvan intended to build this palace, he surveyed the surrounding areas and encouraged people to sell their properties at generous prices. Among them was an old woman who had a small house. She said, "I will not sell my proximity to the king for the whole world." Anushirvan admired her words and ordered that her house remain as it was, reinforcing its construction and building the Iwan around it. Buturi's poem. I arrived at the ruins of White al-Mada'in, a place that belonged to the House of Sassan, now erased, in deserted lands, smooth and barren, where after weddings only mourning remains. In his book, The Songs of Khayyam, the Persian writer Sadegh Hedayat suggests that Omar Khayyam was among the anti-Arab Persians, like Ibn al-Muqaffa, Babak Khorramdin, and others. Khayyam frequently lamented the lost glory of the ancient Persian kings, perhaps influenced by Ferdowsi's Shahnameh. In his quatrains, he continually reminds readers of their fallen grandeur, which is now reduced to ruins where foxes make their dens and owls nest. His bitter sarcasm and allusions to Iran's past indicate a deep resentment toward the Arab invaders and their cultural destruction. Did the poet Khaghani, who wrote his famous elegy, the Iwan of Mada'in, take inspiration from Khayyam's verses? During this journey, Khaghani composed his masterpiece, an ode to the ruins of the Sasanian capital. Reading his verses, one can picture him standing before the magnificent but crumbling Iwan, shedding tears for the lost glory of the Persian kings. Khaghani recalls how Arab poets once praised the Sasanian rulers. He envisions the pre-Islamic poet al-Ajam standing before the Persian throne, reciting, "O king, whose generosity shames the clouds, O crown of the seekers, O pinnacle of greatness, O one whose wealth surpasses what heaven bestows, you grant what cannot be described or measured." Khaghani then shifts his gaze from the grandeur of the past to the ruins before him, and the contrast breaks his heart. The splendor of Anushirvan and Khosrow Parviz has vanished, leaving only fallen columns and desolate walls. The poet recalls a Persian custom dating back to Anushirvan's time, where descriptions of concubines were recorded in royal archives to ensure the purchase of women of ideal